It is who I am. That was how I played the game. That was my mentality. If you don't want to play that way, don't play that way. Michael Jordan.
I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious. Michael Scott. If you get a chance to be on the field, don't mess it up, because you may never get a second one. Tom Brady.
Cat.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Ben Mihalovich, and I'm a sixth form boarder from Stamford, Connecticut. The idea for this talk came when I looked down to make sure my feet were on the white line. I then looked up to see a South Kent player placing the ball on the penalty spot. Down 2-0, if I were to blow my perfect save percentage, our season would be over. I began worrying about what I would say on my podcast. How would I explain that we had lost in the final? And then it hit me. While everyone else was anxiously awaiting for the ref to blow his whistle for the penalty, I figured out exactly what I wanted to talk to you all about today. How did I end up with these goalie gloves on? I hadn't played soccer since age 7, and my freshman year I was on the 4th soccer team coached by T. Griff, who will be the first to admit that he had no idea what he was doing. Although we did go 11-1. The next year I was on JV, which was more intense. By the time junior year rolled around, I had made it up to the AP section. I played as a center back, a position I had only played once before in a tournament at a sleepaway camp. So, when senior year soccer tryouts came, I knew I could either play striker or center back. Then, on the first day of tryouts, Coach Keogh announced that the team only had one goalie due to injury and that we needed a backup. I quickly raised my hand, knowing it was probably my ticket onto the team. In the meantime, I had a second afternoon activity going on. Last spring, Cade, Cooper, and I reached out to Mr. Wass and Mr. Jonkus in an effort to expand media coverage at Westminster. One of our ideas was to run a weekly podcast interviewing coaches and athletes. I quickly took the podcast in as my baby and got to work in the fall, making sure I collected every important detail about every varsity game. Finding scores could be tricky at times, but I did my best to be resourceful. Still, as the fall season went on, I had some really good interviews with the likes of Bonnie, Rich Mugler, and Wheatley Sutro. Some interviews weren't as easy. One person needed to stop the audio after every question because they were so nervous, but I don't want to call anyone out. Margaret Shadak. Regardless, I was thrilled to be a part of the best season in Westminster sports history as a goalie and as the media guy. The season ended in a trophy, though not the one we wanted, but during our run to the final, I already had basketball season on my mind. Being a part of Bench Mob was a blast for the soccer season, but I wasn't sure I wanted to ride Pine for a second consecutive season. During the week of soccer playoffs, I had an idea and decided to text Mr. Wass. I asked him, are we going to have the equipment to do play-by-play this winter? He said, potentially, but rarely is there an op. You guys always play when hockey does and vice versa. I then said, what if I were to get an exemption and call a game every Wednesday and Saturday? He responded with, you aren't doing hoops? I said, as of now I am, but I would much rather call a few games per week than sit on the end of the bench for basketball. It would be so much more beneficial to me. He replied with, we can definitely get the equipment to do it. You'd be asked to call 2 games a week and do a podcast to fill the requirement. I told him that'd be easy. I'd always known I wanted to be a broadcaster, but I never knew where or how to start. My friends once told me that if I'm not calling the Super Bowl one day, then all of my sports watching isn't worth it. I knew this was something I aspired to do in college and wanted a head start on future classmates who had the same goal. When I got the thumbs up to get an exemption to broadcast, I checked the athletic schedule to try and see which games I could cover before Christmas break. Over Thanksgiving, I got pens and poster boards to keep notes for game prep for each team. My dad also made me watch random basketball and hockey games to get a sense of the different sports lingo. I saw on the schedule that there was a home basketball game early in the season, Westy against Loomis. I figured this would be a good game to start with, as I know basketball very well and I don't need to do as much memorization because I can see the players' faces. But turns out that was actually a road game, and the only other home game on the first day of winter sports was a night girls hockey game, a sport I was not as familiar with. As Sawyer loves to tell me, you know nothing about hockey. I was up for the challenge and began my preparation by looking over rosters and talking to Mrs. Keogh, as well as the Hill School coach, Westy's opponent that night. After memorizing all the names on our team and on the Hills team, I felt prepared to call the game with my limited hockey knowledge. It wasn't until I got up to the booth at Jackson Rink that it really hit me that I was going to be going live all by myself. And the pressure not only to call the game, but call it well, began to mount. When the cameraman, someone I did not know, but who was sitting right next to me, pressed play, I realized, this is it. No one can help me anymore. I'm all on my own to call this game. Everything I say has to be grammatically correct. I need to disperse my notes evenly throughout the broadcast, and I can't repeat words or phrases. And that has been the story of my winter. People aren't always going to be there to hold your hand through life. While I did get a lot of support along the way, no one can help me anymore once the broadcast goes live. This is also true in life. At a certain point, you will be on your own and need to find a way to make it work. No one told me to try out for goalie. I just saw the position opening as the best opportunity to make the soccer team. My dad did tell me to do a podcast, but I was all on my own when I first had to start recording. You will be alone at some point in the real world and have to be prepared. I hope you all leave this talk today ready to go out and take advantage of the opportunities which you are provided, not only at Westy, but in the real world as well. Thank you.